get real and kill all that noise. Back to the roots, breaks and b-boys. Who's got the flow? Let's go and make noise. But make no mistake, this is murder. Time to get real and kill all that noise. Back to the roots, breaks and b-boys. Who's got the flow? Let's go and make noise. But make no mistake.
Welcome to this edition of Futurartist Records Presents. Joining me today is a local rap artist whom I've had the honor of working with as part of the Futurartist Records team for many years. Today he's going to talk about his craft. Futurartist Records presents JmV. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been a while that I've been trying to get you in here, so
yeah.
Here we are.
Yeah.
So we've worked together for a long time. We already know each other's stories pretty well, but for the audience, how did you come to start listening to hip-hop? And who are some of your influences?
So that's a long story. I mean, I guess I'd have to start where growing up, I just listened to all kinds of different music. And it was just always playing in the house, whether it be the 50s from my dad, 60s from my mom, throwing in some New Mexican music to Tejano music and country, and then we had my brothers and sisters that were listening to, you know, your late 70s like disco and
right.
folk and all that type of stuff, and to the 80s where it was Michael Jackson being played around the house and just a lot of different other things that were going on. And but when I think it was probably I don't know, 7, 8 years old, I started is when hip-hop started coming more prevalent in the home, I would say.
Right.
Because it was probably late 80s, early 90s is when it started really being more mainstream.
Right, sure.
And it was actually my brother that kind of introduced me to hip-hop, and not in like a traditional sense where he just said, hey, listen to this. It was just more like we were messing around and he was listening to things. We grew up like big WWF fans.
Okay.
And this was the era of like Hulk Hogan,
right.
And, you know, Andre the Giant and these big names in wrestling. So we would play, like pretend that we were wrestlers.
Right.
And the biggest thing in wrestling was like their intro music. And so what we would do is right before we started playing, we would introduce ourselves, and my brother was big about this, and he would just like, you know, make a big old deal out of it.
Sure.
And so he would put on the radio, and just whatever came on the radio, that's what our intro song was.
Right.
And it was always different all the time, but I remember it because it was usually on like 104.3. It was KS 104.3 back then.
Yep.
And it was just a huge hip-hop and R&B station. But at the time, one of the songs that really hit me was Biz Markie.
Okay.
And it was Just Friends.
Right.
And for some reason, that song was just like, man, I love this. I don't know what it was. It probably was the melodies. It was probably a lot of things, but it just like got me.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just hooked right at that point. But then as the years progressed, I mean, it was, I started snooping into my brother's, you know,
sure.
bedroom,
yeah.
Stealing some tapes, came across like Public Enemy, Don't Believe the Hype type of stuff.
Right, yeah.
And, but there was an album by Digital Underground.
Okay.
And it was the Sex Packets album. And that album just blew my mind. I mean, it was really, it was unique. Mm-hmm. And Digital Underground, they're like, they were a live band.
Right, right.
So they had like their own bass players, guitars, drums, and they had all the horn sections mm-hmm. and everything. And so it was really cool to have that and to hear it. But this was the album that had like the Humpty Dance on it.
Right.
And though I wasn't like the greatest fan of the Humpty Dance, there was a lot of other tracks on there that were just so unique. They were different from everything that you can hear on the radio at the time, but they weren't all the same.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And one of the songs that really got me was a song by the artist was Money B on that album, and it was called Sounds of the Underground.
Okay.
And it's just a raw track, and it's only available on the cassette. You
Wow.
cannot get it anywhere. You can find it on YouTube probably.
Sure. Somebody's probably put it on there by now.
Yeah, but it's not anywhere else. And they did that, I think, intentionally. But
Right.
it was just crazy. I mean, the way that he rhymes and the things that he says, it's like aggressive, but it's like he's not negative in any way.
Right.
Like he talks in his first line talking about I'm selling dope, but he's talking about I'm selling this type of music as dope. This is my
Right.
music. This is my dope that I'm selling you. It's my beats and stuff. And so the way he does it is creative. But I think it just kind of related to me, hip hop in general. It just, I could feel it. It was just, it was raw, and the rhyme schemes that they use, the creativity that they use, the words that they put together, it was just, it just hit me harder than any other music, I think.
With all that influence and the way it affected you, and in the time period you're talking about,
Excuse me.
there were a lot of different spins on hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
You had kind of the pop feel, you had the more aggressive underground feel, you had the feel that we're sampling jazz classics.
Yeah.
There was a lot of stuff going on in the hip hop scene at that point. When did you decide, though, that you were more than a fan and you wanted to be part of the hip hop culture?
I think that took years. I mean, I was probably really right around like that 6th grade. I was like middle school when I was starting to develop rhymes
Okay.
and trying to just figure out how to do it. And I remember I was with my friend Louie, and we were just in my parents' garage. I had a old Casio keyboard,
Yeah.
a boom box, and that's it. I mean, I didn't have a
Yeah.
microphone, I didn't have anything else.
Sure.
But I used the preset stuff that was on the keyboard as my melody, as the beats and stuff.
Yeah.
And I used the boombox. I put the ones because it was a detached boombox.
Gotcha.
Remember those at the time?
Yep.
The cassettes and everything. So I took the speakers off, one speaker off the boombox, put it on the speaker of the keyboard,
Okay.
and then I used the other one as my microphone.
Gotcha.
And so I would press play, and everything was live. Like
Mm-hmm.
we just freestyled. And I remember, like, I still have the recording. I think we
Oh, cool.
recorded. It's at my mom's, but it was just like a basic line. It was one of the songs was like, I like all girls,
Right.
sexy fine ones. Doesn't matter, black, white, China. And so it was at that point. It was the 6th grade. I was developing my rhyme technique, like how to get a beat,
Right.
how to stay on beat. But then probably it was like high school when I started to really say, this is what I want to do. Like,
Right.
at least this is my passion.
Right.
Sure.
Again, you talk about your influences, and we talked about how the scene was so varied.
Mm.
To you, I mean, we could look it up in a dictionary, but to you, what is hip hop?
It's a tough question. I mean, hip hop is like, it's a culture, number one, that has a lot of different elements in it. And if we talk to like KRS-One or the Zulu Nation and
Right.
stuff like that, they would say, hip hop, it's more than just music.
Right.
Because it has a lot of different things. So you have your DJ or your producer, you have your MC or your rapper, you have your graffiti artist, you have your entrepreneurs and
Right.
missing one, breakdancing and dancers.
Right.
So there's a lot of elements involved with it, and so hip hop to me is more about, it's not just music. The music comes from the rap. Hip hop is just like, how you present yourself and what you know, how you dress. And, you know, just because you don't rap doesn't mean you're not into hip hop.
Right.
You know, you're not in the hip hop culture. I mean, you know, there's so many different avenues in it. So, but to me, I mean, hip hop is just like this. It's a way for people to express themselves in a time where, you know, society looks down on you.
Right.
So
right. It's definitely different than other genres in that sense, where you can kind of tell what subject matter is going to be depending on the genre you listen to, whereas hip hop is a lot more open.
Yeah, and I think you know, thought about this a lot. Like, you know, rock, it has its own culture, and it's
Sure.
but a lot of the thing about hip hop is it can dive into all these other subgenres. Like, you know, we have rock rap now,
Yep.
and there's
Yep.
there's even now an artist that's doing country rap right now, and he's talking about, you know, being on the farm and you know, being on his truck, and
Right.
you know, it's so I mean, hip hop is evolved into all these different
Sure.
areas of culture, and I think it's for the best, probably.
Right. It allows it to grow, and at least, and not
Yeah.
get stuck in, you know, in a certain spot.
Yeah.
You've done a number of projects, both as collaborations and as a soloist. How would you describe your journey lyrically, musically, and stylistically? Because I know as an artist, your knowledge about the culture, your knowledge about the genre affects things, and the more you know, the more you have to work from.
Mm-hmm.
But for you, how was that progressed?
When I started rapping, I was really big into like it's a Chicano rap scene, I guess is what you would determine it. A lot of guys from like California, Southern California. I think it was more because, one, I'm Chicano, so I kind of lend myself to that area anyway. But I don't know, stylistically, it's been more like I just want to write what is in my heart,
Right.
to clear my mind, because for me, writing, it's my passion, but it's something I have to do.
Right. Sure.
Because if I don't, I start getting like depressed, and you know, I have this creative mindset that I just need to get things out,
Right.
you know, and show people. And even if it's just one person that I show, it allows me to speak my mind,
Right.
and express myself. So I mean, stylistically, I don't know. I guess it would be more like conscious hip hop, like lyrical. Would be what I would describe it now.
You know, having a little background, having worked with you for lots of years, do you feel that that's changed partly because of just where you are in life and how that changes? You know, you've got kids now, you're working a job, you know, all of these things. You know, where at one point it might have been more battle rap, you know, competition type stuff, and now it's, you know, more stories about your kids and about what you're up against just for survival with a family and those types of things.
Yeah, I mean, definitely after, you know, having my kids and having a family, it's changed my perspective on what I should write about or how I approach my lyrics.
Right.
Sometimes I have to kind of catch myself in going too far to an extreme where it's, you know, maybe I'm talking too aggressive.
Right.
You know, because sometimes it's just, you know, you pull your emotions out into your music, and so, you know, there's maybe a day where you're upset with the world, and so you want to write about that anger and put it in there, but I got to kind of pull it back down because it's not me. You know, at the end of the day, I go home, I have my kids, and they put a smile on their face, and it melts my heart. So, you know.
You feel that it's an outlet as well as a control device that way?
I think so.
Or it can kind of keep you in check because it's an outlet.
Yeah.
And it lets you reflect on what your thoughts are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Do you look for a particular sound when you write, or do you just start with a lyric and then just find something that matches it, or do you sometimes catch a melody or something in the music and go, oh, I could write to this? What's your normal approach?
So I think what I do is I take a list of beats and I'll just be playing them while I'm through my day.
Okay.
And I'll just go through each one, and I look for something that's going to meet my style in a way, you know, because there's still a lot of different styles in hip hop.
Yeah, sure.
So this is my approach. I mean, go into going through a list of beats, playing those tracks, and I'll go through them about once, all of them once. Gotcha. And then I'll come back to them, and I make a mark on like which ones sound stylistically to me, and I'll go back to them, and then I start developing a melody in my head. Gotcha. Like kind of a freestyle approach, and I'll start with the hook, or the chorus, and I'll start developing like a rhyme scheme, like how do I want to take on the beat. Right. And from there, if I find the hook and it's something that's catchy to me, then I start writing to it and developing some kind of process. Because for me, the hook sells the story. Right. So you're able to develop your story from that hook. Right. Now, you've mentioned a lot of terms here that most people in most genres would recognize. Mm-hmm. But for folks who don't know what some of these terms, when a hip-hop artist talks about beats, he's not just talking about the rhythm section. So why don't you kind of describe when a hip-hop artist talks about beats, what that means? When we're talking about beats, we're talking about the whole like music production of the music that you're rapping to. Right. But you're also talking about like staying on the beat, you know, something like that. I mean, so we tend to use beats as just, hey, check out this beat. Right. And it's the whole music of the song. Right. Where other artists are like, check out my production, or you know, and they'll break it down. Track. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And then they'll break it down from there. But yeah. Your particular style is unique because it pulls from so many influences. You mentioned conscious hip hop. What is that? I guess it's hip hop that makes the listener have to think a little bit of the story, dive into the lyrics more. It's not. I mean, there's hip hop where you would hear it on the radio friendly. Right. It has catchy melody, catchy hook. You know, the words, regardless, may not like. The words may not have any kind of sort of meaning behind them necessarily. Right. They're just kind of thrown out to, you know, make the listener want to listen to the song. Right. And I think conscious hip hop, it's lyrical, and it has a message behind it. Right. So yeah. That was going to lead me to this, and that is, what do you try to achieve with your lyrics? Having gravitated towards conscious hip hop, there's a lot of different messages you could portray, but what do you try to achieve with yours? I think I want people to hear my message behind it, hear maybe my pain or my happiness, or, you know, all the emotions that you can get out of a song, and listen to what my words are saying. But lately I've been trying to make it more ear friendly. Right. Because sometimes I find myself writing and I put too much words into it, into my message. And then what I've heard from people that listen to my music is that, you know, your songs are great, I just can't get into it
Right. They can't follow
because
the
they
lyric.
can't follow. I can't follow the lyrics because
Yeah.
you're saying too much or whatever. So
Right.
been trying to work on that and just
Simplify
kind
your
of
story
simplify
a
it
little
a little bit.
Sure, sure. Knowing most of the tracks that you've done up to now, you've kind of, to let people know a little bit, your shift has kind of been more into personal experience rather than worldview. By doing that, are you trying to draw people into what you're doing, or allowing people to listen to your lyric and be able to compare their life to yours and go, oh, I get that?
Yeah, I'd rather. I think I like it if people can understand, like, compare their lives to mine a little bit, and like maybe I can reach out to somebody that's been through what I've been through,
Right.
or maybe I just touch a note that's like, hey, they're going through that right now.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, a lot of my songs are about, struggles with depression, struggles with just, growing up poor or whatever. And I've also worked with, I used to be a special education teacher.
Right.
And I used to work with a lot of rough kids that had a lot of struggles in their life too. And so some of my stories are taken part from them.
Gotcha. Right.
And so I take, whatever is just in my head that I need to get out is what I really...
Right. Speaking of your experience as a special ed teacher, I guess, there's always the question of which comes first, but how has what you've experienced through society as a teacher affected the way you write? And do you find that kids who have those issues that they're dealing with, whatever they may be, attached to hip hop because of the messages that it projects?
Absolutely. I think if you would probably take a study, and if Harvard ever wants to do it, let me know, I'm into it. But if you ever took a study, you'd probably find a majority of kids that are struggling either mentally or whatever. They tend to fall in the hip hop, or they may even fall into like the hard rock.
Right.
Because they're both kind of that same mentality. They take that same approaches of, and so, yeah, I think, and it's not just like any hip hop. I think a lot of those kids listen to the more harder, aggressive stuff.
Right. Right.
Right.
So
when I grew up, I listened, and I didn't grow up surrounded by gangs or anything like that.
Right.
Though there were gangs, but it was not to the
it wasn't like South Central.
It wasn't like
whatever,
South Central. It wasn't like growing up in New York and stuff. There's still drugs around and stuff like that. You grow up and you're not like, it's like lower middle class,
right,
or you're growing up poor, you start to see society a little bit differently, and society treats you a little bit differently, and you start putting a chip on your shoulder,
right,
and you start following trends that upper middle class don't follow.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, right.
So, where I take my family, for example. My sisters were probably 10 years older than me. They got to see my family in a more middle class environment.
Right.
After a while, we, dropped into lower middle class.
Right.
And that was about the time when I was growing up. But my sisters grew up more onto that like pop music, Michael Jackson and Madonna and stuff like that. And I couldn't get into that. I couldn't get into pop. It wasn't because it was like too happy for me.
Right.
With the stuff that was going on in my life. And so I was listening to things like Ice-T.
Right.
NWA.
Very, very, very different. Yeah.
I was listening to Eazy-E and Ice Cube and Nas and the Foodies and stuff that were, just they they had this message of, you know, screw everybody else,
Right.
you know,
So
approach.
now, do you think that in the hip hop scene, there's two roads, kind of, one where you write about things that people relate to and that you understand. Do you think there's the possibility that hip hop can influence a change to give a more positive outlook, a more community oriented feel, so that instead of attaching yourself to that and not going anywhere, you can break out of where you're at to be able to move forward and open up?
Oh, absolutely. I think hip hop does that a lot, and it's just coming from artists that are talking about their struggles. You know, Tupac was a big inspiration to many people, but you know, they lift up. He had this ability to lift up people out of certain situations, right? And I mean, it's even though some of the messages that they say and send are negative, I think behind the music, what they did for people,
Right.
is a bigger thing. So like, recent rapper that just passed away, Nipsey Hussle, was amazing artist. Talked a lot about like negative stuff because that's how he grew up with the gangs in LA. But I mean, he did so much for his community that there were thousands of people at his memorial. So, you know, that paid respect, and he, you know, built up so many businesses. So it's not, you know, it's like looking at, you know, trying to ban all pit bulls because all, you know, one bit, you know, you got to look behind
behind
them.
Bigger picture.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know you grew up listening to some of the same stuff I listened to in the hip hop scene, and then there was some very big breaks because things were changing a lot. And just like any genre, you had mentioned rock earlier, all genres have a culture that follows them, whether it be heavy metal or techno or hip hop or jazz. There's a culture that attaches to it. How do you think the hip hop culture has changed from kind of when it started being visible until now?
Me personally, I've seen it change just dramatically. I mean, it's gone into, you know, this scene where, one, it was kind of this, like, when I was growing up, at least, it was like this gangster scene. Gangster rap was big in the 90s. And now it's kind of into a different realm. There's like battles within itself. I don't know if that makes sense. Because there's a lot of artists going pop into the pop scene. There's these artists going country. And then there's artists that are like still trying to hold on to that like lyrical and, you know, conscious moment. And then there's these other rappers that are doing their thing. I mean, I guess it's the way it's changed is like it's opened up to society and it's more mainstream all over the world. And so by doing that, it's now progressed into it's just like a machine, an unstoppable machine.
Right. Do you think that that's changed where the foundation, where it came from? Do you think a lot of people have no idea what hip hop really can be?
I think right now, I would say at least 80 to 90% know what hip hop is.
Okay.
Have heard of a hip hop song.
Right.
And probably have some on their playlist right now.
Right.
I mean, it's just.
But would you categorize those as real hip hop, or do you think that real hip hop, you know, because back in the day of early battle rappers, and even through the gangster rap of the 90s, there was this sense of if you don't do certain things revolving around hip hop culture, you're not really hip hop. Do you think that still stands, or do you think because it's so much more available and so much more acceptable that some of that has kind of gone away?
I think people try to, I mean, there's always been those people that have their viewpoints and opinions about things, whether, you know, regardless of where it's at.
Right.
And I find myself sometimes like, this isn't hip hop. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, if, you know, it kind of is, because you're rapping, and the fact that you're rapping over a beat makes you a hip hop artist, makes you into that realm.
Gotcha.
So just because I don't like it doesn't mean there's not millions of people that do like, you know what I mean? So it's hard to say what's real hip hop, I guess.
Right. You have done a lot of recordings, working on some recordings now. We weren't able to have you perform today.
Yeah.
So I'd love for you to come back sometime and give a performance, and, you know, maybe talk about some of your tracks so that people can start diving into what hip hop does, what it sounds like, how it works. Because it very much is part of a lot of genres now.
Yeah.
And so, you know, people may say they don't like hip hop, and some of it may be on their playlist, like you said, they just don't realize it.
Yeah.
So, well, thanks for coming in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Appreciate it. We'll have to get you back in here and let you perform and dive into some of the more details of what hip hop is and things.
Sounds good.
How can people find your stuff?
So you could always reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram, at JmV 303.
Okay.
You can find my music on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube.
Pretty much wherever.
Wherever.
Yeah.
All digital market. So.
Cool. Where's your audience mostly found right now?
It depends.
You know, the digital world has changed things, so.
Yeah. It's been like Los Angeles area.
Okay. Cool. So kind of where your roots started from, as far as you're
probably.
listening. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks again for coming in. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
We'll
no
have to
problem.
do this
Anytime.
again. Folks, make sure that you check out all those things he just mentioned: Spotify, Instagram, Facebook. He's in a lot of places. You can find his music pretty much everywhere. And make sure you like, you share, comment on this. If you have questions for JmV about what hip-hop is or how to approach it, maybe you're just starting as an artist, or maybe you just want to know more about the culture, reach out, contact him, let him know you're interested, and ask him some questions. But again, thanks for watching this show. Support these artists. It's so important to support these artists no matter what the genre is. Thanks again for watching. Futurartist Records presents.
Earth, wind, water, fire, life. Coasting on the spirit ride. Earth, wind, water, fire, life. Coasting on the spirit ride. Earth, wind, water, fire, life. Coasting on the spirit ride. Earth, wind, water, fire, life. Coasting on the spirit ride. I'm a warrior, native to this land. Stuck inside this motion, always coasting with the upper hand. Staying focused, walking on a path that's broken, looking for direction that will keep me on the ground floating. I passed the crossroads, now I'm on my vision quest. About to go rogue, waiting for my next test. Listen, this is magical, follow me, I'll guide you slow through this vision's complex, terrifying obstacles. I see illusions, pursuing seems to haunt to me. Try to stay calm, I feel the soul start to smother me. I see my ancestors standing right in front of me. Where am I? Who am I? Where am I supposed to be? Close my eyes, feel my heart rate climb, trying to readjust my sight before I start to lose my mind. Change the scene, looking for a way out. Sweat dripping down, about to ride till I pass out. Water, fire, life. Coasting on the spirit ride. Earth, wind, water, fire, life. Coasting on the spirit ride. Earth, wind, water, fire, life. Coasting on the spirit ride. Earth, wind, water, fire, life. Coasting on the spirit ride. I see myself riding into battle. Bullets fly around me, I'm steady with my arrow. I crisscross through lanes in attack mode. Kill the opposition, counting cool like a crow. I see an eagle soaring right above me. Keep an eye on my people and stay hungry. Floating through the scene like a dream. I'm a madman, reaching for my place on this totem you don't understand. Follow me, I'll keep you on the right direction. Walking through the circle called life, we always see perfection on another level. Watch me as I climb, balance each element, enlightened as I rise. From this moment, I see what no one else can see, hear what no one else can hear. Invincible, ride free on a journey, protected by the spirits. Let the drum kick in and listen to these lyrics.